But now we're going to move into this. This is going to change the pace quite a bit different. This movie is called Qala, and Qala is a movie that came out on Netflix. And my personal opinion is that Netflix has been coming out with some really good Hindi movies recently. Kala may not necessarily make that list. It's a very uncomfortable movie, and I'll tell you why. So Kala, we're following the relationship between between a daughter played by Triptii Dimri and her mother. And in this movie, Kala is a singer, or wants to be a singer at least. She's kind of always under the hand of her mother. She's a very talented singer. However, whenever it does come to, get these jobs, get these gigs, her mom's kind of always putting her beneath, holding her back from her potential and, ultimately her dreams as well. And so we're really seeing this strange relationship. But then this movie takes a turn. So at first, whenever I was watching this movie, I was just thinking, it's one of those daughter mother, type movies. This girl's a really good singer, and she's gonna somehow try and come out of that and be a professional singer in the end. But it really just kind of starts to show her her psychological decay, almost like in a sense. Kala kind of turns into her own villain, I would say. One thing that this movie I think does well is explore, or at least try to explore, some areas of mental health that just aren't really talked about. Like, for example, this is putting the movie aside, topics such as schizophrenia or psychosis or any of those types of really severe mental health disorders are not quite talked about as much as something like depression or anxiety might, right? But they are very real things to talk about because people live with them every day. And I think this movie tries to attempt to talk about, just serious mental health disorders besides depression and anxiety. But what it does is this movie starts to get really uncomfortable. It almost starts to portray like a horror movie of some sort, which in my opinion made me start to believe that, or made me start to feel that whatever kind of mental disorder she's going through in this movie, it's almost like alienating it even more by attributing it to some horror attributes and whatnot. And then sooner or later, this movie just became really, really uncomfortable for me to watch. It was just it became very, very dark, very hard to watch. Fun facts, it takes place in the 1930s, and she's wanting to be a singer. So that's a little bit different. I haven't encountered a movie like that before, but honestly, this was one I had to kind of stop watching a little early just because it was just uncomfortable. I know that when we were talking earlier, you had some similar feelings with it as well. Do you agree?
Absolutely. So I think about the thing about this movie was, for me, there is this entire period of time when women, it's very anglicized. The entire music and film industry is in Calcutta instead of in Mumbai. And of course, it's all fictionalized to a great degree. However, there are some names that are derived from really big figures in Indian music industry, and how the Indian music industry was led by men with absolutely no respect for women. They would pick and choose women the way they pleased, and there was absolutely no respect for their craft, and how this politics of singing worked. And that was one side of it. The other side was this woman who's completely spurned by her mother, and in a very toxic relationship with the mother, dying for the mother's approval, and the mother never giving it to her, or validation from her mother. Mother never validates her. The mother doesn't validate her as a person. The mother doesn't validate her as a singer. The mother validates somebody else over her. So the entire psychosis that she undergoes, and her own mental health degrades because of that, and she starts believing that she doesn't deserve what she has. So that's one side of her character. The other side of the character is this assertive side, where from a group of men photographers, she actually chooses the woman photographer. She suggests things. There's an entire scene where he says, so you're a woman artist, and she says, why can't I just be an artist? Why do I have to be genderized? So there are some quips around identity. So here she is, she has zero identity on one end, and there she is trying to assert her identity in her workplace, but in her personal life, she has her identity is so connected by the umbilical cord to her mother that she can't get rid of the toxicity of that entire process. And then the psychosis end of it, where she completely believes that, she doesn't have what she deserves. It's somebody else's. It's Babil Khan's characters, and she just is borrowing it because he couldn't, because of her health. So all of these things mixed together actually made it a very riveting watch. However, I think what it also, even though the messaging is great, it's the same genre, same noir genre as Bulbbul was earlier. However, I think where I really missed out on this entire movie, or really connect with the movie, was the fact that it was long, and there were the very dark scenes. And even though all the actors were phenomenal in their screen presence, I just couldn't connect with the characters.
I will say this movie was very beautiful to watch. Like, I think the screenplay was very good. I think the cinematography in this movie was very good as well. Something that a lot of movies were kind of missing out on. So that is one pro about this, but I do agree with M. With how long this movie is, it was a lot more dark than it was light, which is something that you can totally do. But when these scenes were, kind of in the darker tone or whatever, they didn't quite need to anywhere meaningful, I felt like, to really just keep me wanting to watch it, which is ultimately why I had to stop watching early. Now, do I recommend it? I do think I would still recommend this, at least for a one-time watch, just because like I said, cinematography pretty good, actors phenomenal, right? Pacing is kind of where it got me and where I needed to, just kind of take a step back. But highly recommend giving it at least a one-time watch.